I'm calling to order the special council meeting of Monday, August 8th, 2022. Sheila, please call the roll.
Mr. Mills?
Here.
Ms. Aker? Ms. Walton? Here. Mr. Gaga?
Here.
Mr. Lemay? Mr. Gentili?
Here.
Dr. Walker?
I believe you will be without the services of Mr. LeMay and Dr. Watt. So we'll proceed. Good evening, everybody. Good evening to the folks out in the hall. I'm sorry that there aren't enough seats in here for everybody. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to review Resolution 2022-17 regarding the septic sanitary sewer conversion on Shaker Boulevard. We've received the bids. I don't know, and right now I'm addressing both council and for the moment our audience. There are there's a letter that I put out on an email to certain residents this afternoon who I saw had been contacted on an email listserv of some type by a resident this afternoon, and that's where I borrowed those emails from because I didn't know who had received his email. Some of those bounced back to me, so I don't know that you had received this before. That is why I have it printed out and left out there to be certain that people could have it. We're gonna turn our attention to our business for a moment, and then we're gonna go to the public hearing about it. First, let me just continue to summarize why we're here. We opened our bids as my letter. Did everyone get a copy of the letter in the audience that was out in the hall? Did everyone have that? Good. There was misinformation going around.
Mayor, the letter that you sent out today,
Yeah.
I did not get a copy of
You
that.
can go grab one right out in the hall if you want. That's it.
The
You have it?
senator offered
You have it
a
now?
copy to the-
Okay, good. I want people to have it. In summary, what is going on in that room? Who let themselves in there?
So I just opened the door so I could hear.
Joe, is there anything in the room that, you know?
I don't know. I had no.
All right, I don't want to close the door behind you on the door in the hall. Please, close that door. I'm going to let you stand there, but that's a working office with materials that aren't for anyone. So just stand there, please, and
Okay.
I know you may not think they're important. We do. Stand there, be comfortable. Okay?
Understandable, thank you.
Thank you, sir. We opened our bids. As you know, this is a process that's been going along for quite a while, council. And Don had prepared estimates of the bids of the contract. They came back for a variety of reasons that I described in this letter. I'll let Don get into it a little more regarding supply chain issues, the general inflation. The sum being that the bids came back much higher than was ever anticipated at the time the project was being estimated. The key thing for many of you assembled here this evening is what does this mean in relation to the assessment that the city had previously announced to you. When we announced that assessment, it was provided to you as an estimate. And but we put a cap on that estimate right at that time, that the estimate could not float greater than 15%. That was said at that time. It is certainly our recommendation, my recommendation, and we'll, hoping that council will go along as they vote tonight, to respect and honor that commitment to the residents, that is only going to be the outer edge of that estimate, being the estimate plus the 15%. there is an additional $1 million that came in on that bid. It's our recommendation that the city absorb that $1 million and not pass it on to the residents. I think this is really important because there's a commitment, in my view, that was made to the residents as to the amount of the assessment that you were going to be receiving on the sanitary project. We'll be able to pay for that $1 million from the city. Fortunately, the city is doing well financially. We have been through very careful management with myself and with the support of the city council. This year, we fortunately have a over $600,000 ARPA grant. That's the American Recovery Act money, the federal money. We'll be able to direct towards that additional expense that the city's incurring. And we'll also be contributing on top of that another, Joe will say the number, $350,000, give and take, to accomplish this $1 million extra. What's important is that your assessments are going to be within that range that it was originally told to you that they would be in. And that to me, that is very important, that the city respect what it has said to the residents and what the residents relied on in coming to understand what this project was going to be. That said, that's my summary. That said, I'm going to turn to Don. Don, can you catch council up as to your bid process and opening them up and what you discovered?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We opened up bids, I believe it was June 28th, and we had 3 qualified bidders submit bids. About 7 or 8 qualified bidders had picked up bid packages, but we actually only got quotes from 3. The low bid was a company called Fetchco Excavating, and their bid price was $4,922,634. That's for not only the sanitary sewer portion, but there's a pretty extensive storm sewer bit of work that's occurring on the street, as well as some work at pump station. The pump station work and the storm sewer work are not part of the assessment. That number was well in excess of my estimate. Unfortunately, we are seeing price escalation that tends to compound itself. Materials costs are up, hauling costs are up, and the contractors, quite frankly, are all very busy. And there's a lot of work out there, and there's not enough contractors to do it, and they're struggling to even find materials for some of these projects. So it's something we're seeing certainly region-wide and nationally. We bid out of our office between $30 and $40 million of construction work a year or more, and we're seeing those prices creeping up in every single industry that we're touching. So that's the number that was our low bid, was Fetchco at 4.9. I don't think it's a situation where if we rebid this, we're going to see a lower number. I think it's going to be, since there's only 3 bidders that actually bid this time, we might have fewer bidders next time. And I think we could expect the numbers even to stay the same or bump up even higher. The second low bidder was a full $500,000 more than the low bidder on this project. And that does not bode well for trying to repeat the project.
Okay. Thank you very much.
What was the year of that June bid?
So you're going to have to wait for the public comment session, all right? Please respect that. Joe, do you want to take this to council through some of these numbers, and we'll open it up to the public comment?
Well, I mean, basically, what it means is, we had worked the numbers on what the assessment would be, and we were at 14,215 change. The 15% adds 2132 to that number for a total of 16,348.15. And to your point, like you said, that's the maximum that we're going to be looking to assess the residents onto this project.
Now, residents always have the option of paying it up front or amortizing it over 20 years?
They could pay the full amount up front. They could pay partial up front, and whatever's not paid will get certified onto the tax duplicate through the county. And it'll be over a 20-year period or 40 semi-annual payments.
Okay, now I understand that we haven't sold paper yet to do the project.
Correct.
And that would relate to interest charges and things if someone took it over 20 years, correct?
Correct.
All right, so without being able to be nailed down, because we haven't gone to market and sold paper yet, in a general ballpark, about how much more per year would this add to the prior estimated assessment as opposed to the assessment plus the allowed 15%?
How much would the interest add? Or no,
How much more,
the 2132 is a little bit over $100 a year.
all right, so it'll cost people, if they take the 20 years to pay it,
Right.
it'll cost them about $100 more a year.
Correct.
Okay. I think that at this point, what we're going to do is suspend this meeting and turn to the public comments. And then we will return to council's consideration of this matter. So this meeting is suspended. All right, when we're going to have public comment, we'd ask that anyone's comment is of course welcome. Please identify yourself, what your address is. I would ask that you, in respect of the many people who are here, who may want to speak, that you try to be succinct in your comments. We're talking about the 15% of the assessment at this point. We're not this purpose is not to go back to square one and relitigate, gee, are we going to do septic to sanitary conversions on Shaker Boulevard? That's not the topic for this. What we are going to do is talk about, and I welcome your comments regarding the what we've talked about already, the bids, the necessity of utilizing that 15% that was part of the conversation. I know it was part of the conversation for public hearings that the city put on. It was part of the conversation at the Assessment Equalization Board meetings for anyone who cared to object, I'm told. And so that said, if someone else has said just about everything that you think you want to say, you're more than welcome to simply join in and someone else's prior comments instead of having a feeling you need to restate everything that someone already said. Feel free to just adopt that for your thoughts. And with that, we will open it up. Who has a comment, if any? Sir.
My name is Dr. Alexander Hoffman. I live at 32019 Shaker Boulevard. And I am well, sir. How are you? I want to address the council and thank you all for your time tonight. I want to say that since it seems that the purpose of the meeting is not to discuss whether or not we are going to move forward with the project as it stands, but rather to discuss the 15%. I'm grateful that the city is willing to absorb this $1 million cost. I think that capping at the 15% does hold true with the ethos of the city as I've come to understand it living here over the last 8 years. I would hope that you would keep the promise you made to the residents, and I look forward to continuing to live in the city. But if things are not, if this promise is not kept, my family and I would consider leaving.
Thank you. Anyone?
Yeah, my name is Craig Moore. I live at 29099 Shaker Boulevard. Sorry about that. In the spirit of transparency, I understand, Mayor and Council, that you're indicating that you've capped the amount 16%, I'm sorry, 15%. But that cap doesn't appear anywhere in any of the documentation that council signed. It doesn't appear in the resolution underlying the project. It doesn't appear in the ordinance of the project. It seems like it's kind of an after the fact representation. And it's interesting that we're like whenever I buy a car, I get a statement with numbers on it, something I can look at to reflect on whether it makes sense. And you're talking about a project for multiple millions of dollars with a notice that went out, and the notice didn't include any of this information related to the 15% cap. So I'm curious, when did council vote to limit the amount that the homeowners would have to absorb to 15% above the assessment?
Is that your comment?
It's a question, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'll have a few more questions.
Well, please get it all in words. As you've been here before, Craig, you understand the process. We don't go up and down and up and down.
Actually-
Tell us what you have, make your comment, and, you know, to the extent that anything needs addressing, we'll address it.
Okay, so I object
We
to the
always have,
process.
and we always will.
Okay, I'm trying to communicate, now you're telling me to stop. I object to the process. I object to the lack of transparency. I object to the fact that the city engineer on this project, through his companies, received close to $500,000 dealing with the septic system project. He's an officer of the city. There's a fiduciary duty. I think he's got a lot of skin in the game in this project. And so if council's relying on his assessment, I think that needs to be taken into account. I also understand that the mayor and several council members have septic systems that aren't in compliance with the state requirements. I think those council members should abstain from voting because I think they have a conflict as well. And I'm surprised that with the letter that you provided, that it didn't include any specific information about any of this stuff. Those are my objections.
Thank you. First of all, I'll turn to the law director for a moment. To the gentleman's, and it's really to Mr. Moore's letter that was circulated, so you know, to the community, that letter that was sent out. Let's deal with the conflict issue first. Is there such a thing as a conflict because either myself or other members of council remain to this day on septic where the projects have not proceeded to have a conflict to participate in this?
Under the Ohio ethics law, a conflict of interest is statutorily defined as having a direct pecuniary interest in the outcome of the legislation. It's not related to general activities that the city's involved with. Is a council member voting on something that directly benefits them in a pecuniary sense? At best, and I don't think, there's a large part of the city that is not in any way impacted by this. At best, there is some indirect issue that's been alleged, but in no way is it a conflict of interest. The city has declared its intention to follow a process, and this is the second step, Gates Mills Boulevard, a portion of Gates Mills Boulevard being the first. This is the second. If you follow that line of thinking, no member of council could vote on anything if there's something progressing through the city, because they might sometime later be impacted. So there's absolutely no relationship there. Sorry.
The issue of the 15%, is that something I should ask Don about? Or
Well, let me just say something. There was a question as to when did council decide. Council has not decided anything. The administration has brought legislation to council this evening. for the purpose of considering it, following the process under state law, to hear from the people who are impacted by it. And council will then deliberate it and decide the issue. Council has not made its mind up yet. That's why we have this process of public deliberation. So the idea that anything has been decided by this legislative body, the administration is making a recommendation. That's what's happened so far.
That was the word I used.
Yeah.
All right, and in that regard, regarding the 15%, you've been to the meetings before, as you have, Mr. Moore, including the equalization board, where I believe you probably heard this again there also.
I wasn't there.
The 15% where your counsel did, your lawyer was at the meeting. The 15% has been widely discussed, frequently discussed at these meetings. That it was an estimate we were providing. Mr. Shi, you were at these meetings. Can you comment on this?
Yes, the 15% number, I believe, is actually a state of Ohio number for an assessed project. If you exceed the 15% threshold, you need to essentially have this hearing that we're currently having to make the public aware that it's gone up to that number, and then council has to decide whether or not they want to move forward or how they want to handle this issue.
As I generally understand it, Steve, is council actually has the ability to assess greater than the 15%.
Yes, we've heard some comments that with respect to the stormwater and the pump station, those would not be accessible in any of them. But to the extent that the sanitary sewer project exceeded the estimate, the 15% only triggers a hearing requirement. Although I was at those assessment equalization board, and that was not clearly communicated. The impression that the city commitment that the city was giving was we're capping at 15%.
Well, I think it's critical, and I think it's responsible for the city to honor council representations made to the residents that we are not, that their exposure on the estimate was up to 15% more. And I think that it is responsible of the council to adopt that recommendation and limit for this purpose. This is the project that we're here before tonight. To limit that to the 15%. Is there?
And let me just say one more thing about the process. We don't know the actual costs of what the project is. What the commitment is that it's 15% over the estimated amount. If the project comes in less than what's been estimated or what's been bid, because sometimes they don't take all the quantities that are required, it could go down. The assessment would not go up. And there would be one more piece of legislation the council would adopt at the end of the process, once the final total costs are known.
Yeah, and I make no representations to the public that we will see that positive result that Mr. Byron just described, but I would point out that on the Gates Mills project, the estimate was more than $12,000. And the final assessment for the Gates Mills folks was
8,800 or 9,200.
So that project came in low, and that's all that people were assessed. So that's just a data point for everyone to know. Past performance is no guarantee of future success. Is there any other?
Hold on a second. He didn't finish one of his questions.
Sir, with all respect to you, you're not running this meeting.
You skipped an important point.
No, I have responded to Mr. Moore's point. Sir, I need for you not to interrupt the meeting, okay? Could you do that for me, please? Not interrupt the meeting? There are a lot of other people here. Mr. Moore asked 3 points. His other was an objection to the process. We've already talked about, we're not dealing with the process. His objection is noted. Now, you had a comment. You had your hand up. Why don't you talk and have it be done? Sir, what's your comment?
Troy's Way, 31370 Shaker Boulevard. If I'm wrong, did you not ask if somebody on council?
Sir, you have to address us.
Okay.
With all respect, you have to address
I
us.
thought there was one
not
of
the
his
audience.
questions, so I'm asking for clarification. Is somebody on the board or involved with the city was compensated by one of the companies that made a bid? I believe that's what he asked. We
Okay.
asked him for clarification, because I don't believe that you guys addressed that.
No, I can answer that. No company that made a bid, no person of the city has been compensated by a company that made a bid. So thank you.
That was, just to clarify, that was not my question. My comment related.
Mr. Moore, you're
to-
not recognized. Please sit
You
down.
misunderstood. Give him this.
Mr. Moore, just
May I
please
be
sit down.
recognized?
Sit down, Greg. Come on. You're a lawyer. You've been to lots of these meetings. You understand the process.
I don't understand the
Well, then
process.
you've
The
asked.
process keeps changing.
I try to get all your questions out.
You
I
misunderstood
respectfully
his
try to
question.
respond to it. Now, please, it's now someone else's turn, okay? It's not the Craig Moore meeting. There are lots
Oh
of
my
people,
goodness.
okay?
Jeez.
Is there someone else? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Seth Wolf. I reside at 30099 Shaker Boulevard.
Yes, sir.
I'm a lawyer like Mr. Moore, but I'm not the kind of lawyer who does any of this, so if I sound like I don't know what I'm talking about, it's probably because I don't. But I appreciate the chance to make a comment. I have two suggestions or requests in connection with the legislation. The first is, I would propose to delay the adoption of the ordinance for a period of 18 months. I was going back and forth between 12 and 18, and the basis for that proposal is that I believe, given the supply chain disruptions that are affecting the country right now, we are effectively buying into the top of the market. And prices are starting to come down. We all know that gas prices have fallen about 40% in the last 2 months. Car prices are starting to fall down, fall further, et cetera. And we have another couple $1 million of costs, and I understand where it's coming from because these supply chain bottlenecks are so severe. I believe strongly that those are going to start working out over the next 18 months or so. And I believe strongly that if the project was to be rebid in 18 months, we'd get actually a much lower price that was more commensurate with the level that was at before. So that was the first proposal. The second proposal has to do with what I think is the big missing aspect of this supply chain issue and these increased costs, is that we're talking about the city assessment. We're not talking yet about the amount that the homeowners are going to need to pay to actually do the tie-ins. And like the city assessment, my anticipation, I have not had the opportunity, I'll be straightforward, I have not had the opportunity to go and get any quotes yet, but my expectation is that when the homeowners begin to get quotes for the actual tie-in work that they need to fund out of their own pockets, they're going to find that those quotes have become much, much higher than even the people on Gates Mills Boulevard, pay. And so the specific proposal I would ask for, and again, because I don't do this type of law, I don't know whether it's an amendment to this ordinance or a different one, is basically a hold harmless for taxpayer, the property owners on Shaker at a specific amount of out-of-pocket costs. And I'm only speaking for myself. I am not speaking for anyone else here because I have not discussed it. But I would throw out there the amount of $50,000 with a 5. And basically the proposal is that if a Shaker Boulevard homeowner is going to need to spend more than $50,000 total, and that's net of any grant revenue and things that would offset it, but that is both for the tie-in costs and for the assessment, that the city should either relieve that homeowner from the obligation to participate in the SOAR, or should hold the homeowner harmless for the excess above $50,000. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Let me address that. I'm going to ask some of the team here to provide some better data too. I think you asked very good questions. Your first point is, as I noted, was should we simply delay the acceptance, rebid it at a later time? Let me give you some of the problems that I have with that, or concerns I have with it. And I'm going to let Don chime in, because this is something that from day one that we heard these numbers, first question out of my mouth was, should we rebid this project? That was just patently obvious that was a question that we needed to ask. As you know, half of, roughly, it used to be half, but still roughly half of the cost of the project is supported by a grant from the Northeast Regional Sewer District. That grant is already almost 2 years old. It needs to be utilized. I was to a recent meeting with the regional sewer district. They have $15 million a year that they make available. They have, over the next 5 years, between 900 million and $1 billion of applications for that $15 million a year. This is an extraordinarily competitive process for us ever to get grants. It is a significant concern. We don't have 18 months, there's not a hard shelf life on this grant. I'm not going to represent that. There is a reality that the sewer district looks for people to utilize the grants. It was delayed by COVID. They recognize that. There's no more money from the district on this grant round to go back and get more money. On the issue of, and to delay on the grant is to provide no guarantee that that grant is ultimately going to be utilized. This city council has to make a decision to proceed, to accept the bid. And that brings us to the second part of the conversation. What is the professional expectation of where that bid should be? I'm going to turn to Don in a moment on that. On your point of, well, let's wait 18 months because you believe, your personal belief is that prices will be better, then let me say, this project is not going to be completed until, if we were to start now, they're going to start when, in January you're talking?
Sometime end of the year, early.
And when's it going to be done?
It likely won't be complete till September or October of next year.
And then people have 18 months to connect.
Well, they're supposed to connect a little faster than that, but in reality, it usually takes more than a year before everybody connects.
So far as you're concerned regarding an escalated price for homeowners, what I'm suggesting is that by the time the project gets to the point where the homeowners are making the connection, if in fact there's going to be any reduction, savings, benefit from deferring the project, that should be at a point in time when, from the homeowner's viewpoint, you're getting to benefit from that depression of, I hate using that word right now, depression, but it's not going to be a recession, I keep telling myself. But there should be a lessening of the price that the homeowners will face. Don, why don't you explain to both the council and the public as to what your read on costs are for the project?
Thank you, Mayor. Again, I'm not an economist, so I can't tell you globally what's necessarily going to happen, but what we continue to see is significant price increases in the construction industry, and infrastructure spending continues to decline. So we have a double effect. One, there's supply chain issues that reduce how much pipe is available, how much stone is available, and you also have a limitation on how many contractors can physically do this work. There's a labor shortage right now where contractors are paying laborers $5, $6, $7 above prevailing wage just to have people show up to operate a piece of equipment or work in a trench. We are not seeing this slow down at all, and quite frankly, the amount of work that's out there, especially in Northeast Ohio and some of the other big cities, work's not going away, and there's not enough people to do it, and I don't see these prices coming down in any significant way in the short term, near term. 18 months, it could be where they're at right now or higher. I just don't have the confidence that the prices are going to drop. There's certain key things that we see, like ductile iron pipe, that people can't buy this material for the next 8 months. Well, when 8 months comes from now, it's not going to be like the floodgates are open and the pipe is back to the prices it was in 2019. Those prices are going to remain high as they're just trying to fill orders that are, some of them are 8 months, 12 months. We have a pump station we ordered in Tucker Pike, a generator for pump station. had a 48-week lead time on it. Normally it'd be about 10 weeks. Then we got information that they added another 18 weeks on that lead time. So you're talking a year and a half by a piece of equipment. And that is in really every industry that we see, as far as concrete, asphalt, stone, plastic pipe, concrete pipe. All the material costs are way up, the supply is low, and it takes a long time to create companies that can actually manufacture, to increase the manufacturing capacity at some of these locations. You don't just build a pipe company tomorrow and 4 weeks from now it's up and running. It takes years and years on some of these things. So I don't really have a strong confidence that the prices are gonna come back down to where things were in 2019. I just don't see it, and I don't want to predict where we will be. And certainly, if we pause and try and rebid it, the prices come in right where they're at or even higher, and we run the risk of losing that grant, we haven't gained that.
We risk one other thing that I didn't talk about, that I'm gonna let you address. The County Board of Health, the underlying reason why we're doing these projects. Why don't you comment on that?
The County Board of Health is the enforcement end of the Ohio EPA for our home sewage treatment systems, our septic systems. And they know that the vast majority of the septic systems in Pepper Pike are aging and would not pass a modern test as far as sampling the effluent coming out of these systems. They are working cooperatively with us, with the city, because they know that we have this process in place, that we are gradually trying to chip away and continue to expand the sewer system to take more and more houses off of septic and over to sanitary sewer. They are not forcing homeowners in almost every circumstance to replace an existing system that's failed. So they'll do things to get the system functional, but they're not looking for people to do a widespread replacement. That is a concern. If we postpone the actual bidding of this project another 18 months, you're at least 2.5 years from those systems getting replaced. And then there's other systems or this system that we're going to install in Shaker, there's other branches that would tie into that. So those are on hold even longer. So you're really just pushing the entire replacement schedule back by at least a couple of years.
And that's a real concern. Right now, the relationship that we have with the Cuyahoga County Board of Health, and they were here one night and addressed residents who came to hear about why septic, going back to that, why sanitary instead of septic. And as it was expressed then, there's a high degree of confidence between the Board of Health and the city. The city has a program, we lay it out for them, it's a big sheet of paper. Here are all the areas that need to be converted to sanitary. And they believe us. They believe that the city, because they already know through their own inspections and efforts, they know there are many, many failing systems in Pepper Pike. Almost half the city is on septic. They are